folder. And so we should both have it now.
Okay, I have that. Good evening. And my name is Steve Worthington. I'm the mayor of University Place, and I'm calling the regular meeting of the University Place City Council for Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022 to order. And that has us ready for the roll call. And if the city clerk would like to start the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Keel,
Councilmember Keel, present.
Councilmember Wood,
Councilmember Wood, present.
Councilmember McCluskey,
Councilmember McCluskey is here.
Councilmember Fleming,
Councilmember Fleming here.
Councilmember Belisi,
Councilmember Belisi is here.
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa,
Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa present.
Mayor Worthington.
Mayor Worthington, present.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
Very good. Thank you. And we'll proceed with things. And with that in mind, let's move to the Pledge of Allegiance. And I would invite Councilmember Keel to lead us in the pledge this evening.
Great, thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel. Appreciate that. And that brings us to the approval of the agenda. This evening, I would like to start that process by making a motion to amend that agenda and pull item 6C on the consent agenda and continue that matter to the March 7th meeting. Is there a second?
This is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I second the motion.
All right. So we'll pick up the item if this passes. Is there any discussion? Any questions or discussions about that? Unless there's an objection, I will consider the motion passed. I don't see an objection. The motion is passed. Item 6 is moved to the March 17th meeting. That brings us on to the vote for the agenda. And I call for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Mayor, this is Councilmember Belisi. I second the motion.
Very good. We have a motion and a second to approve. Are there any objections to approving the agenda this evening? Any objections? I don't see any. We're going to declare that as a consent agenda, approval rather, by consent, and the agenda is as amended. Thank you. And that brings us to public comments. And with that in mind, we're now on the public comment portion of the agenda. This is the opportunity for members of the public to provide comments to the City Council for any items not appearing in the agenda or on the consent agenda. Participation in public comments and public testimony in the event we had public hearings are accepted in the following methods. By email, where we receive written comments. Those written comments should be directed to the city clerk, ejanita@cityofup.com. Comments received up to 1 hour before the meeting are provided to the City Council electronically. Also, you may present comments by phone by calling 1-509-342-7253 and entering conference ID 701-042-018#. Use the raise hand feature by pressing *5 on your phone to be recognized. Your name or the last 4 digits of your phone number will be called out when it's your turn to speak. At that time, press *6 to unmute your phone, and we'll review the directions if you choose to call in. By computer, you can also join us virtually by clicking on the hyperlink provided in the agenda. Use the raise hand icon located at the top of your screen to be recognized. Your screen name will be called out when it's your turn to speak. Emmy, did we receive any written comments tonight?
Mayor, we did receive one written comment from Mr. Palmer, who is also here present tonight.
Very good. And I understand that thank you for distributing that earlier this evening. And at this point, we'll now take comments from anyone that wishes to. And let's see, looks like we have Mr. Palmer, I think, still with us there. Looks that way. Very good.
There he is.
Here we are.
Excellent. Is that Mr. Palmer? There we are, Mr. Palmer. Great. Thank you for joining us. You have our attention, and we do limit our comments to 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you. I sent the email in. I guess you have a copy of it. I propose that we get us a poet laureate for University Place before everybody else beats us out. Lacey just has theirs earlier this month. We certainly don't want Fircrest and Stillicum and DuPont to get ahead of us out there. There's a lot of good reasons to have a poet laureate, but the biggest thing is, it's time. It's time that we do something. I was the president for Up for Art back in the day whenever we put in the roundabout for the Eagle's Nest right there. And we've been here in University Place for quite a while. I'm the president of Puget Sound Poetry Connection in Tacoma, but we need to get some stuff going on here in University Place. I've brought my poets in, and I'm a hospice volunteer right down the street there at the hospice house, and we do a lot. And we did, with all the restrictions and everything, it's kind of tough to get in there, but we have in the past carried people there and did poetry readings and discussions and classes and stuff like that. I just think it's time that we're on top of everything else, to get people involved in there and get some poems on the wall, get some classes, get some art walks, and I recommend that we have a process to have people that are interested in being the poet laureate if we decide to move on with this. And I put reference in my letter on the process that Tacoma used to do their last one. We can amend that or whatever. And I'm available to jump in there anytime. So that's it, guys.
Well, Mr. Palmer, thank you. Appreciate your comments, and thank you for sharing your ideas with us. We'll keep you posted in the future if that moves forward and such. Very good. Thanks for joining us tonight. And then we have also Steve has joined us. At least he has his first name up. And Steve, we are all very acquainted with you, but nonetheless, if you could, when you start your comments here, just mention your name and address, that would be appreciated. Thank you, Steve. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
All right, am I on now? Excellent. All right. Thank you, Steve Worthington. Lots of Steves around here. My name is Steve Thorndale. I live on 53rd Street West. My wife and I have been residents of UP for over 30 years. I was on the Park Advisory Commission from 2018 to 2020 and served as the chair for my final year. In my last visit to the council on October 31st, I recommended that the city apply for state and federal funding in May 2022 to build a series of outdoor courts, pickleball, tennis, and basketball at Cirque Park. This recommendation was consistent with recommendations in the 2020 Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan approved by the council in March 2020. Please remember that PROS plan report included a drawing by the consultant showing that there was sufficient space to add both new sports courts and hold space for a possible future community center. The recommendation was also endorsed by the commission at the time. I do hope that the council, city staff, and PAC are continuing to engage in discussions on this recommendation on a regular basis. However, tonight, I want to highlight a recommendation that PAC also made in 2020 regarding signage at Cirque Park. It was to have a second Cirque Park sign installed on Bridgeport Avenue, so those who are walking or driving Bridgeport would be easily able to see this sign and therefore know the name of the park that they were seeing. This recommendation, which at that time would have probably cost about $2,500 for a new sign, was not supported, however, by the city's park director. Quite frankly, I don't know why the city would not have wanted to do this. Here are a few additional thoughts on this recommendation. One, Cirque Park is the premier park in UP with the most amenities, but only has one sign. That sign is on Cirque Drive and is not viewable from Bridgeport Avenue. Two, several other smaller parks, including Homestead, Curran, and Colgate, have 2 signs. Why wouldn't the city want 2 signs for smaller parks and only 1 sign for its larger, most premier sign? 3, people who are not familiar with UP parks now drive, bike, or walk down Bridgeport Avenue and can't tell the name of the park from the road. I've even had several people from Lakewood and other areas drive by and say, what's that park? I don't know the name of it. 4, although the park director and city manager could add a second sign along Bridgeport for Cirque Park without the council's approval, they have not done so, even with the Park Advisory Commission has previously recommended this. Therefore, I recommend you discuss this with them, just if you agree that this might be great to have increased visibility for our citizens, for others driving through the area. So that's pretty much it. It's not quite as exciting as a poet laureate, but I do recommend that this be increased for visibility and for people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate your comments and sharing that with us. Appreciate. All right. Enjoy your night. Take care.
Thank you. You too.
Steve, you're on mute.
I was just saying, I'm not seeing any further public comment from folks. And I was asking Emmy, if you see someone that I am not, then please call that to my attention. Otherwise, we'll move on to our next agenda item.
I don't see anyone else on the in the lobby, Mayor.
All righty, great. Thank you. Appreciate that. And with that, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mayor, this is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
This is Councilmember Belisi. I second.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. And with that, we have a motion for approval. Are there any objections to approval of the consent agenda? Any objections? I don't see any. Considered the agenda approved. Thank you. And that'll bring us to the city manager report. And there is Mr. Sugg right on cue. Thank you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Two items. First is pavement management. In order to determine the condition of our pavements, we have hired a firm that is a specialty firm that does this work. They have outfitted a van with a lot of equipment, and they'll be inspecting all 88 miles of our streets starting next week. We expect they'll take the data back and they'll do the analysis and prepare a report. And we expect to receive that report by mid-April. So we'll be hopefully be able to share that with you when we receive that. So that's just a quick update on pavement management. And now I want to turn it to Public Works and Parks Director Gary Cooper to give you an update on the Homestead Park project, which is under design. As you know, Council approved that last summer for design. So Gary.
Thank you, City Manager Sugg, and good evening, Council. I want to give a quick update on the Homestead Park project. We haven't talked about it a lot lately, but it's going full steam ahead, even though you don't see anything. On the surface, the duck looks like it's floating, but we're paddling pretty hard under the water to keep that project going. We've been having bi-weekly meetings between the staff and the GGLO staff. Right now, we're at about 50+% completion of all the bid documents and specifications. Currently, staff's meeting with GGLO, confirming material review and approvals. We're on track to go out to bid on that project mid-April of this year. So that's nothing exciting to report other than we're on track. And as you know, one of the components of that was art for the gateways. And the budget has $90,000 for gateway art. And GDLO was working with city staff, the Up for Art group, and developed a project vision. And I'll read it real quickly. Gateway sculptures that welcome visitors into the park. Art should be inspired by the cultural and environmental influences of the site, city, and region. The goal will be for an expressive, engaging site element, respecting the genesis, location of the site, cohesive with the overall design for the project. And you can tell I did not write that. That's definitely not a construction guy that wrote that description. But taking into consideration the budget of $90,000, the selection committee decided to focus on the two main gateways, the north and the south entrance to that park. The thought being it would be better to focus on two larger, more impactful statement pieces at this time. There'll be an opportunity for additional smaller art over the years to come. So January 6th, call for artists went out via e-newsletter, website, social media, UPTV. Also, the Up for Art group knew some artists that they reached out to. Ended up that we had 8 artists that set in applications for the opportunity to design and fabricate sculptural elements for Homestead Park. January of this year, the Art Selection Committee reviewed 8 applications received. We select 2 artists for interview, and that took place January 26th. After discussion and consideration, the Homestead Park Artist Selection Committee ultimately selected Fitzhugh Carroll to do the 2 Art Gateway installations. So we have the artist picked, but we don't want to go any farther with that until the project actually goes to bid. We don't want to get an artist working on art and just in case something goes sideways and we don't do the project. So the plan is when we come back to council with the contractor on hand and we have the bid ready for council approval, that night there'll also be a presentation of the artist. And he won't have the exact design because that's part of the design, but council will be able to see some of his past work and listen to his concepts. And so we thought it'd be better to package it all at one time instead of get the art out ahead. So I think that's the basis of where we are in Homestead Park project. And with that, I'll turn it over to City Manager Sugg.
So, Mayor and Council, that concludes my report this evening.
Very good. Well, thank you, Mr. Sugman, and Mr. Cooper. Thank you for the update. Appreciated hearing where we are in our art project for the park and just making sure we're getting our carts, anyhow, our horse in front of the cart as opposed to a different way to put it together. So with that, we can move on to council comments, and Councilmember Keel, you're first up per our seating order.
Good evening, Mayor. Thank you. I don't have any comments for tonight.
Councilmember Keel, I'm surprised, but thank you. All right, very good. Well, then I will move on to Councilmember Wood.
I do have a couple comments. That shouldn't surprise too many people. First one is I would just like to say thank you to Gary Cooper. I understand he's going to be going on his terminal leave here shortly in a week or two. And so just like to appreciate all his work he's done. We're going to, I think, have a formal opportunity to say, goodbye coming up. But until then, just want to tell him thank you. And I appreciate everything he's doing, especially with Homestead Park. Second comment, I want to talk about a couple more Senate bills. This is going back to my public safety roots. There are 2 Senate bills right now. One is 5919 that has an equivalent House bill, 2037 or almost equivalent. That is going to be talking about use of force, pursuits, and things like that. Generally speaking, the law enforcement community supports these bills. And it'd be very nice, especially if the Senate version can get through the process. So if you are talking to a state legislature at some point, that'd be a good one. And then the second one, I was not even aware of this until a few days ago. It's Senate Bill 5841. They are talking about a sales tax reallocation to cities and towns for law enforcement, a 0.1%. It's not a new tax, it's just a reallocation of existing tax money. And it'd be dedicated towards law enforcement. Obviously, that would be very helpful for us as we're trying to figure out how to increase staffing in our local police department. So if you could all speak to folks about pushing that forward and getting that through, that would be a wonderful thing for our community. And that concludes my comments.
Very good. Thank you, Councilmember Wood. Appreciate your thoughts there. So as we get things close to the end of session, so good. And then Councilmember McCluskey, any comments you'd like to make tonight?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Councilmember Wood, for the insight on those two bills that are going forward in the Senate. I appreciate that. I'm going to look them up and make my comments accordingly. So thank you for bringing them to my attention. And also I concur with Councilmember Wood's comment in regards to Mr. Cooper, but I don't think he's out of the city quite yet until Homestead Park is finished. So we still got the dude until then. And I'm sure if there's any other issues that, or especially his intellectual insight and his experience can bring to the table before he gives his final goodbye to us, I would surely appreciate that. And also kudos to all of his service. You can't look anywhere in the city without his touch and his talent. And so I think City of UP has memorialized him almost in perpetuity because things deteriorate, but not so fast. Right, Gary?
Yeah.
Okay, and then I just have a question for Mr. Sugg. I would like to know, you mentioned 88 miles that will be analyzed. Is that including the residential or just the arterials and?
It is both arterials and local streets and neighborhood
Okay,
streets.
so
It's all 88 miles is the center lane miles, center, if you measure by the center line. So there are, believe it or not, there's 88 miles in UP, but it includes all the local streets, all the neighborhood streets as well as all the arterials.
if you look at the scope of things, that's under 100 miles that encompass University Place, and how much traffic that we have and how we manage all the egress and into all of our cities. That's pretty amazing for an 8 miles radius city. So thank you I'm going to make note of that and remember that. Thank you.
Yep, Gary, organized to get this pavement rating done, which is typically it's done on a 10-year cycle. So this is the year.
The one thing, Councilmember McCluskey, it's 88 centerline miles, but we have 209 lane miles, and that's confusing for some folks. But if you look at Bridgeport, that's 4 lanes. So each mile of a center lane in Bridgeport would be 4 miles. So overall, we have 209 lane miles to maintain.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Cooper.
Very good. Yeah, I appreciate the comments, Councilmember McCluskey. Thank you. Councilmember Fleming, anything this evening you'd like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be very quick. I guess this is Gary Cooper celebration night, or the kickoff, I should say, of that. But I just wanted to do a shout out to Gary and the road crews, having driven around UP over the past week or so. It has been impressive, to say the least, Gary, to see those crews out there doing the road repair work. And they've done a stellar job. And normally when you see a patch on a road, they just kind of throw in some asphalt, level it out, and call it good. I actually watched some of those crews out there do above and beyond that. They're doing a great job. I just want folks that are watching tonight to know that we've got a top-notch road crew out there maintaining our roads, especially after a harsh winter that we've had on those roads. So thank you. That's all I have tonight to add.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Flynn. Appreciate that. And indeed, I appreciate you mentioning that. I do think as well, the road crew and Gary does an excellent job with maintaining our streets at the best standards possible. That brings us to Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. This is Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. And so before I start on my comments, I wanted to ask Councilmember Keel if AWC, since he's the president of the association, if AWC is supporting the Senate bill that Ed mentioned regarding the 1% for law enforcement.
I don't know. I can imagine that given what it's doing, we would be in support of it, but I don't know it exactly. I can go look that up.
If you can, and maybe email us, that'll give us as I speak, as I comment to certain legislators, I can say, hey, AWC is supporting it and so forth. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, what was the number again?
I'm tracking the number is 5841, and it was 0.1%. 1% would be lovely, but.
Yeah. That's a Senate bill. Okay.
Yes, Senate bill.
I'll look it up.
And so, Mayor, the comments I have would be that the appointment I was given through this council in January to be on the Pierce County Regional Council. I attended the first meeting that occurred here this last Wednesday. And so there was some elections that was completed, and I was appointed to the Puget Sound Regional Council Executive Board as an alternate. And then I was appointed as a board member to the Puget Sound Regional Council Economic Development District Board. And so those are two leadership roles that, as per council goals that we said we wanted to do in the retreat. Thank you, Mr. Keel. I'm doing my part and making sure that our council members achieve certain leadership positions in the region to help our city. Oh, you're muted, sir.
Sorry, but I just wanted to say congratulations on those appointments. Those are an excellent step that helps both our region and our community. And being engaged with the Pierce County Regional Council and on the Economic Development District, they help bring our voice closer to where the decisions are made. So thank you for doing that, and good job. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? You're on a roll there. I didn't want to interrupt.
No, other than I did spend the last 3 days, if you can actually believe it, reviewing the Puget Sound Regional Council's strategic plan, which they just adopted last month, well, actually in December, for the next 4 years, and found a lot of nuggets in there that I think I need to bring out and brief the council as time goes by, as well as they're passing a resolution for the housing strategy as well, which really was baffling me, because a lot of what's in there seems to be something that our newly shaped organization I don't know what they're going to do that's anything different that the Puget Sound Regional Council is already recommending. So it's a different conversation, another time for that conversation, and which I will brief the council and make some recommendations.
All right, very good, excellent. Well, thank you. Then I'll move on to my comments. If oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Bellisi. Excuse me. I was.
Boy,
well, thank you for helping realize that.
Meeting. That's a second meeting in a row, Mayor.
I'm used to the old theme.
I think I need to wear bells around my neck here. Congratulations, Javier, on your appointments. I received a letter in my mailbox from the Economic Development Board from the Vice President, Maddie Merton. It reads as follows: on behalf of the Economic Development Board for Tacoma Pierce County, congratulations on winning the 2021 EDB Excellent 10 Award. The work your organization provided in service of Pierce County is truly deserving of this honor. Enclosed, please find an award to commemorate this tribute, and thank you for your leadership and service to our community. So congratulations to council and city staff. We have an award from the Economic Development Board.
Well, this is a meeting full of lots of good news. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I don't want to cut you off, though.
No.
Caroline, is that the Pierce County Economic Development Board or the Puget Sound Regional Council Development Board?
No, it's Tacoma Pierce County, as I
Tacoma
said.
Pierce County. Okay, thank you.
So that was all that I had to say this evening.
All right, well, that's very good news as well. So, and in the leading top 10, I'm generally familiar with that award, and it's a prestigious group to be part of. So appreciate that, and everybody's hard work to get there on staff and frankly on council too. So, good job. So I had just a couple of comments. I did attend the Cities and Towns meeting that happens each month. We had a presentation from Dr. Chen, our health director, health district director, or health department director, excuse me. And in the course of that, he talked about a variety of things going on with COVID. Much of that is now current in the press and from a meeting that took place several weeks ago. One thing I was going to note is there is some conversations about backfilling some budget needs, and not surprising, I suppose. I suspect we'll hear more about that, but I just wanted to get that, bring that to the council's attention. There may be some future thoughts or comments from the county council or the county executive who provides who's engaged in the budget process for that department. Other things, I know the city staff has also been working on the council goal we just referred to in our upcoming 23-24 goals of having a regional voice for our community. And they have been putting some information together. I believe they'll be sharing that with you shortly. Some of that information is various opportunities for either members of council or members of our community to help in regional boards and commissions. There's two of those, though, that are coming up fairly quickly, and I wanted to just bring those up. One is the AWC Board of Directors position. There's an incumbent in there that was recently appointed, but it'll be up to vote here in June, and I believe the deadline is March 27th for applications, if there's someone on council interested. There's also, you'll have more information in your AWC materials, Association of Western Cities materials. And I believe there's also a seat on the benefits board, and I'm not using quite the proper term, but this is the board that oversees the insurance programming for health benefits.
Retro board.
Say again,
I
Councilman?
think it's the retro board.
Oh, is it the retro board? Okay, which is a little different, and that's the insurance, I'm trying to think of a quick way to describe that, and it's not coming to me because it involves state workman's comp insurance and how we deal with managing that process. Also valuable, saving money. Okay, then anyhow, both those are relatively short fuse items. If you have any interest, take a look at your AWC materials to find the details, and don't rely on me. But there is some opportunities there. I'm frankly looking at that a little bit myself, but I haven't quite made that decision. Those are the items I wanted to touch on. And unless someone has some follow-up, we would move on to our study session. Does anybody have any second chances here? If not, we're going to move to our study session. And with the study session, we're going to start with our stormwater management plan. or program rather. And I think Jack Eklund and Todd Smith are going to help us with that. Jack, would you like to start, or is it Todd's turn to lead here?
I'll take the lead, and then Todd will back me up with any of the hard questions. But thank you, Mr. Mayor and City Council. As you mentioned, I'm Jack Eklund. I'm Director of Engineering, and with me is Todd Smith, our NPDS Coordinator. Tonight, we're bringing for study the annual update to the city's stormwater management program. The city is required to annually update this program as a condition of our NPDES municipal stormwater permit through the Department of Ecology. This program lists the components that are required to be addressed under the permit and identifies the actions and activities conducted by the city in meeting the permit requirements. The individual elements that are addressed in the program are stormwater planning, public education and outreach, public involvement and participation, mapping and documentation, illicit discharge detection and elimination, controlling runoff from developments, operation and maintenance, source control from existing development, monitoring and assessment, and reporting. A summary of the activities associated with each of these elements is provided in the memo that's included in your council packet. I won't go into detail with this, but we're happy to answer any question you have on, and if you want more detail, we'd be happy to provide it. This year's update is relatively minor and primarily associated with updating the required permit milestone dates, as well as the dates for the public participation and comment periods. In addition, however, additional information was added to the stormwater planning section regarding the city activities associated with our stormwater comprehensive plan update currently underway that we have. It was just a few council meetings ago that we approved the consultant to work on that. So that's moving along nicely. Anyway, this proposed update has been posted on the city's website since February 16th, and the public comment period will run through March 7th. The contact information and how to provide comments is also noted on the website as well. This proposed update has been reviewed and is in conformance with our obligations under our NPDES permit, and its adoption helps us ensure continued compliance with the Department of Ecology requirements. This concludes our report, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you. So questions, council? But we're all, I know we've had a chance. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember McCluskey. Now I see your hand. Yes, please.
Yes. All right, thank you. Hi, Todd and Jack. This is, I think, as we move on, you know, we're gonna get more and more rain in the region. So this is particularly heightened importance as we emerge into those, you know, the following years from now. And in particular is a couple things. The educational workshops that we have, you know, I would like to know, you know, when, you know, Mr. Smith has the topics and the dates so that I can promote it on my site. And hopefully if it's not on a Wednesday evening, primarily, I can attend. But also, you know, even if people can't attend, to get those recorded and placed up so that, you know, people can follow up and at least review them. I think that the ones that I have attended were certainly well worth my time and value, and I continue to do some of those things to this day. So I really appreciate that, and I think if we record it and keep it up for a while, the general public would, I think, access that as well and glean a lot of really good information to help them out. The other aspect of it is there are some residential streets in University Place that I think would warrant us looking at, not just our arterials or our semiconductors into the arterials, but also other streets. You know, our citizens, I noticed through the years, you know, they made note of some things, and also, as we know, Day Island around the South Spit area where the pump is, that is becoming more and more of an issue with the overflow and also some runoff from from a resident that's creating a large puddle that at times you can't in a regular vehicle traverse over. So you're kind of blocked from your home in regards to that. And I think other areas in University Place might have that same issue as well. And also in the educational outreach to also create a proactive citizen engagement as when we're doing our walks through the city, casual walks, that we just take mind of the storm drains and clear them. I know I go around, and so does a couple of my girlfriends, and we see leaves or other debris clogging the storm drains, and we just remove it, just so that the water can flow freely in case it rains. So that's all my comments. You guys keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Councilmember Wood, your hand is up. Some comments, sir?
Just a quick point of clarification or question. The public comment period we're in right now that goes through March 7th, that is just for the update to the existing plan. That doesn't have to do with the public comment for the revision, the SMAP revision that you're working on, that the contractor's out. That's two different things we're talking about, right?
Yep. Yeah, so this is the
Okay.
comment period just for the program update that we annually update. And then the larger, there'll be a more extensive public outreach process involved with the comprehensive plan update.
Got it. Thank you. I just want to make sure I understood. Appreciate it.
All right. Any other comments from council or questions rather? Either way. I did have a chance to read through the update. Found it very helpful. And while it tends to be minor, there's a few things that are changing as it evolves. And the important thing is the work that's being done here to help protect our environment and our citizens. And it's a key program that we fund through fees for that purpose. If nothing else, I think we're ready to move on to our next item. So, Jack, Todd, thank you very much. And thanks for the good work of getting that draft put together for us. We look forward to seeing it in the near future for adoption. So appreciate that.
Thank you. Bye.
That'll bring us to our discussion on the ARPA expenditure. And we have a resolution in our packet to discuss that is perhaps more than a starting point. And I think we're waiting for either Matt Kaiser, City Attorney, or Eric Faison. We've got them both. There we are, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us. And I'll invite who's ever up first to get the ball rolling on our ARPA discussions.
You actually get a twofer for us today on this one. Call on both of us, you get the twofer. I feel very for the record, Matt Kaiser, I am your city attorney. And then we also actually have a corresponding PowerPoint. Amanda, if we can pull that up. Yeah. Tonight we're going to be talking about ARPA. ARPA, not to be confused with a band or other blah, but ARPA is the American Recovery Plan Act of 2021. It represents one of the largest single influxes of monies that have come in to the city. And tonight, Eric and I are going to walk you through a lot of the constraints on ARPA. This has been an issue that council has talked about off and on for the better part of the last year and a half or so, in terms of potential expenditures and also potential outlays. So if I can get the next slide, please. Just to give you some brief regulatory context, if all these acronyms are driving you bonkers with respect to funding sources, there's a good reason why. This is actually the fourth round of federal funds that are COVID related. Council may recall that the most significant one that it was involved with was with the CARES Act back in 2020, in which the city received approximately $1 million that it distributed primarily in aid to local businesses, the nonprofit community, residents, and the like, together with deferring a number of other COVID-related expenses. The other funds offer a number of opportunities for both families and households within the community, as well as ongoing expenditures that may potentially improve the community. But this is the fourth, and this is sort of the big one, the one that's in front of us right now. If I can get the next slide, please. There are a number of timeframes, and these timeframes in part govern why we're talking about it tonight. The main reason why now? Just in the last month, the U.S. Department of Treasury released its final rules on how to spend the ARPA funds that we're talking about. And the City of University Place is set to receive about $9.5 million. It's a little bit more than what we had anticipated. There were some jurisdictions nationally that did not choose to accept their distributions. So that works out that there's just a little bit more for those jurisdictions, such as the City of University Place, that chose to accept those distributions. The final rules are fairly dense. If you have some light reading time, they're all 430 some odd pages. So it makes for some fun light reading. They're dense. The mayor talked earlier this evening, the good news is there is more good news in the final rules compared to the interim rules than there isn't, but there are rules. And some of the rules are not good, but we'll walk through that here. The two other key takeaways that I also want council to sort of impress upon themselves as we go through this discussion is you have two deadlines. The first major deadline for us is on December 31st, 2024. That's our deadline to obligate the funds. In other words, we have to have those funds. This is what we're going to spend the monies on done by that point in time. December 31st, 2026 is the deadline to have the money out the door, spent, checks cut, and gone. If the city does not meet those deadlines, we are returning money to the U.S. Department of Treasury. So I want to just set that there right now as we go through, particularly with the budget cycle coming up. I see a hand up. I'm fine taking questions along the way.
Fine,
And
thank
just
you,
a
please,
quick
Stephen.
note, those two dates Matt and I missed, they should be 2021. So we both went through the slides and
I just, yeah.
Thank you. So you answered my question.
Yeah, DeLorean flux capacitor. Next slide. There are four main uses of the ARPA funds. Council in its discussion is focused primarily on three, but I think it's important just touch briefly on four so that way you have sort of the general overall lay of the land. The first major one is to respond to the public health emergency or the negative impacts. What we're generally talking about there in terms of that bucket is the assistance component. Council's discussed in broad sense, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a few minutes, in terms of aid to households, the businesses, that sort of thing. If you think back to what the city did in CARES, where we provided local business assistance, local nonprofit assistance, local family assistance, this is the ARPA analogy, for lack of a better phrase. The second is for workers performing essential work. This is for premium paid. This has not been an issue that council has spent a lot of time talking about. I'm not going to spend much more time talking about it, except to say the legislation allows it, but it's not something that we're looking at. The third is for the provision of government services. There is a very bureaucratic definition of government services we'll talk about, but this is actually probably one of the more important uses of ARPA funds that is available to us for a very key reason that we'll get to in a minute. And then the fourth is necessary infrastructure improvements in the area of water and sewer and broadband. Council has spoken at length about investments, particularly in sewer, and we'll talk about that too. Next slide. The downsides. There are some don'ts associated with ARPA, and this is one of the first series of don'ts. Under the ARPA rules, there are a number of requirements where you can't use funds. The good news, if there is good news in here, is none of the funds or none of the uses that we have been talking about fall into these categories of things that we can't use funds on. We can't offset any tax cuts that the city may have done, which we haven't been talking about. We can't use deposit funds and pension funds, which we can't do. We cannot use the funds for debt service or replenishing financial reserves. There are jurisdictions that pull from financial reserves to make it through. ARPA is very clear that you can't use ARPA funds and put the money back in. You can't use funds to satisfy lawsuits. You can't spend money if it conflicts with the purpose of ARPA or with the purpose of COVID. So you can't have, I don't know. I don't know. I had a flip example. I'm not going to use it. And then finally, you can't, it also recognizes that there are other laws that apply. This is just not simply, hey, it's a freestanding thing. And some of those other laws still recognize that there's environmental laws and the like. It's also still subject to state and local procurement policies. It's also subject to, as we'll talk about here in just a second, local requirements as well. If I get the next slide, please. Among the local requirements that ARPA that's binding on us, this may be familiar, but it's worth a reminder, is under the Washington State Constitution. There is the provision under Article 8, Section 7 of the Gift of Public Funds, where no city can give aid to any other association unless it's for the benefit of the poor and infirm, or poor or infirm. It says and, the state constitution, Supreme Court says it's really an or. This is the first of two state constitutional provisions that we're talking about tonight. The other one is more exciting perhaps, but we'll get to that in a second. But the reason why we're talking about the state constitutional limitations is this. As we get into the discussion related to business assistance primarily or other local assistance, this is not a scenario where you can say, here's money, just no conditions attached. The gift of public funds doctrine does pose limitations on that, and it does pose some constraints on our ability to do that. And as we go through that, we can certainly work through that. I do see a hand. I'm happy, like I said, I'm happy to take questions along the way.
Matt, I'm going to presume the mayor has said it's okay.
Thank you. Yes, I have.
Based on what you just said, then am I to imply from that statement that the city has violated this constitution through our previous decisions to support local businesses with the previous funds?
We have not violated that provision, and a lot of that comes
and why
down to
is that?
It's how the funds were traced, and we do have the benefit of a 2000, I believe it's a 2000 Attorney General opinion that specifically deals with the interface between the gifting of public funds doctrine and this very provision of the state constitution together with these federal monies. When we put together the CARES Act, we had the benefit of the AGO's opinion at the time. We carefully tailored that program to be in bounds and color inside the lines with what the AGO had expressly laid out. And more to the point, we had also successfully completed in 2021 an audit by the state auditor's office. There were no findings, there were no management letters, there were no exit interview items in which the CARES Act was one of the issues that was looked at.
So based on that, if the council were at some future date to say we wanted to continue in some form or fashion support to local business, you would help us craft the language
we can
keep
get
us
there.
out of these troubled waters?
We can get you out of troubled waters. I will tell you that the waters are choppier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
because
some of that comes because of how the funds are traced. Some of that comes with respect to some of the other pieces that ARPA itself has laid out. But we can navigate those waters if that's where we end up going.
okay.
And as a reminder, council has sent the discussion of business assistance to the Economic Development Advisory Committee. So we'll be evaluating that in more depth. But just to be clear, these are two separate pieces of federal legislation. They may include different provisions. And so how allocation from one particular set of regulations relates to this is not necessarily apples to apples. The legislation was written differently.
I understand, but I just want to keep this particular topic, since many of the council members in the past have supported in some form or fashion support to our local businesses. I don't want it removed off the table because of language or whatever on that. That's all. But thank you.
Not a problem. We're gonna get really deep into it when it goes to.
All right.
We can go ahead and get the next slide. So the first decision point for council is we talked about the general governmental allocation. One of the benefits to the final rules is how revenue loss is calculated. Under the interim rule, there was a really complex formula and it spanned a couple pages of the then interim rules. And the feds realized, well, wait a second, you can do that and we can continue to do that. Or what they provided for in the final rules was to use the tax phrase, essentially a standard deduction. And that standard deduction is a one-time election where a local jurisdiction can say, we claimed up to $10 million has our local revenue loss without having to do any math. If you recall, the City of University Place's distribution under ARPA is approximately $9.5 million. It is certainly the staff's recommendation that we make the $10 million standard deduction election without running through the formula. I can share with you, and I think Eric can probably put some firmer numbers on this. When we had run the numbers under the interim rules, we came out to an approximate revenue loss in the $2 million neighborhood.
Yeah, and that was through the end of this year. So it might have been higher as time goes on. Yeah. But certainly doing a one-time election, not having to do all the accounting and not having then our accounting be subject to audit is so much more efficient and our recommendation.
If I can get the next slide, please. So we're starting with sewers. I'm jumping around a little bit here because sewers has primarily been the area that council has talked about in terms of where the largest expenditure of money has been. The ARPA rules require that it's not just sewers, but necessary sewers. And there's an actual definition that it's actually responsive to needs that the community has identified and that there is a cost-effective need for that. We are beginning that process. That process is underway with identifying consultant, identifying community engagement along those lines. We suspect at the end of the day, the sort of sewer projects that we are talking about will likely meet this definition. The ARPA allowable sewer investments are also fairly broad. It cross-references other federal statutes, the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and the State Water State Revolving Fund projects. In short, if there's general sewer projects that we are thinking about, they are generally going to be on this list. And while we talk, well, yes, if I can get the next slide, please. I shared earlier on state constitutional provisions. Oh, I see a hand, I can stop. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. I think you're about ready to answer my question. And that was the projects that we've talked about, does it fall under the necessary sewer definition?
So far, they seem to be lining up as though they will. So yeah, the one caveat I also want to share with council, and this relates to the constitutional provision that we shared earlier on the gifting of public funds. There's another state constitutional provision that relates to sewer and other infrastructure projects. It's an exception, but on the gifting of public funds doctrine, where it allows public monies to be used for certain infrastructure projects. But if you choose to use those monies, they serve as a lien against structures benefited. So why am I sharing lien language and state constitutional language and that sort of thing? As part of the council's discussion on sewers, there has been some discussion in terms of, are we talking simply main lines or how far into beyond the main lines and directly connecting residents can we go? ARPA and the provisions that are allowable certainly would allow for the side sewer connections, except you're limited by other regulatory constraints that exist at the state level. This is one of those regulatory constraints, where if you use ARPA funds, they do serve as liens against the benefited individual homeowner properties. The upshot of that, go back. The upshot of that is functionally at the end of the day, the recommendation is for sewers that the city council use any ARPA-related sewer monies primarily for the main lines and not for side sewer connections in terms of how to spend those monies. If I get the next slide, please. Shifting to provision of government services. This is actually straight from the regulations. I don't like the block quote regulations, but this is one of those regulations we looked at. Was worth block quoting because it's not often that you get a government regulation that says government services are government services. The provision of government services piece under the ARPA rules is about as close to what we would call general fund-ish as you can generally get with federal monies. What that allows is a broad range of projects that would not ordinarily meet some of these other criteria. You're still subject to the big picture pieces under ARPA, but it allows for a broader range, such as the maintenance or other infrastructure, cybersecurity, the hardware, and provision of police services. It also makes clear that the list isn't exclusive, and it goes back to that definition. If it's a government service, it's a government service, and thus potentially expendable under ARPA. Next slide, please. The response to negative impacts, and this goes back to the business assistant, or primarily under the business assistance in terms of the range of allowable uses. It speaks to loans or grants to mitigate the financial hardship, loans, grants, and other in-kind services and technical assistance. As Eric shared with you, this is council at the last council meeting passed a resolution directing your Economic Development Commission to start studying this issue and report back to council by August. They have this on their agenda. They're set to meet this week for their first touch on this on Thursday morning to start going through the process and fulfilling that directive from council and working through that process. Next slide, please. And then for this, I'll flip it back to Eric.
So this is basically a summary of what is in your packet that you're studying the actual resolution for. And if you agree with the resolution or give us some changes, we'll be putting that on the consent agenda at the next meeting. We're looking at a total award of $9.5 million. You've previously discussed $6.5 million for sewers. The IT expenses, this would include staff expenses for the next 3 years, as well as council chambers improvements that have already been authorized and expended. And then the last amount is about $1.8 million that would go towards the police contract next year. And our police contract is about $4.5 million. So this would pay a portion of the police contract. This would still leave about $700,000, which would be reserved for future use. That happens to coincide with an amount that you guys have previously had some discussion about related to business assistance and what we previously expended with business assistance, but it doesn't foreclose you spending it in some other manner that you so choose. So this is the staff recommendation, and you'll see the actual wording in the packet. Hopefully you've had a chance to read that, and we are now available for questions.
All right, council, so a chance to ask some questions and follow up with things. Do we have anyone who would like to start us with some questions? Councilmember Belisi.
Thank you, Mayor. For the public that's watching, could you clarify what the $1.8 million for police funding would do to our account?
It will pay for a significant portion of our police contract with Pierce County for next year.
Right, but it will not add additional officers.
It will not. Correct. We don't have funds to do that on an ongoing basis.
Thank you, Councilmember Belisi. Anything else? Then Councilmember Keel, I think you're next up.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. And thank you guys for your report. I'm feeling real special that we got both of you, by the way. Usually it's one or the other. And to have both of you, I used to think you were the same person, because we'd only see one or the other, but we grabbed both. That's great.
20.
The question I have deals with just all of the money that's coming now out of the federal government these days. I mean, we've got ARPA, and I actually shared some information I gleaned when I came back from the NLC conference last month around just billions of dollars beyond. I think ARPA is under something called BIL, build the building infrastructure that the president has right now, and I'm just curious. And there's a lot of different colors of money that's in there, and I'm very keenly interested in looking at ways that we as a city can go through those different funding sources and granting sources and beginning to craft together a tapestry of funds that could come in that actually could build the things that we need in our city. You gave the example about sewers, right? And how that $6.5 million may only can go so far. But I do know that there are money in the things that I talked about that actually talks about last mile sewer, right? That gets into the house and all those guys. So I'm kind of rambling, but I'm just real curious to see if you guys as a staff, if you've taken a look at that, those other kinds of sourcing things, and gave some thought about how we can begin to weave together a more circumspect plan for our citizens.
And we haven't had a chance yet to dive into all of those, Councilmember, but we have forwarded certain portions to different staff members. Like Jack has gotten some portions. I've gotten some portions. So we're going to be dividing up some of those to look at them a little bit more carefully. It is, I'll say, a challenge with all of these various programs, and so many of them are grant programs, just understanding all of the elements in there. Who do you apply to? What are the critical pathways and all that sort of thing? UP is a very flat organization, and most of us have a day job. And so this on top is, it is a challenge. So, but we are going to be diving into those and getting really focused on those. So don't want you to feel like we have left those, to the back burner at all. They will be.
And thank you for that. And my last comment, Mayor, on this is that I get that we're really flat, and I appreciate that. And I know you guys are, pedaling. We use the analogy of the duck, right? I know that you're pedaling really hard, and that's not lost on me at all. I just want to underscore this very special and unique opportunity for us to get the funds that we need. And I'm hoping, and I'll talk with our city manager more about this, but that we somehow figure out a way to leverage the opportunity. I mean, this is a once in 50-year, 100-year kind of opportunity where the amount of money that's coming out of the federal government, and they're focused on local cities. And I just think that we need to figure out a way to leverage it to the fullest.
Thank you, Councilmember Keel, and I think you make a very good point with that. In 30 years of local government work, over 30 years, this is a special time. Councilmember McCluskey, you're next up.
All right, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I'm going to tag team on Councilmember Keel's comment, because also I noticed some state grants that are quite interesting as well, in alignment with health and well-being infrastructure and parks. And so I know we're lean and very flat, and maybe a consideration of a temporary grant writer that can go through and look over all of this and start getting some a skeleton together so that our staff could bring it forward, so we don't lose this unique opportunity. I think it might be well worth our city's benefit to get somebody who is experienced in that to help us through this phase. I'm not saying a permanent position, a temporary position. I think might be very valuable at this point in time. And then my other it's a question. So we're looking at this resolution that will come forward to the City Council on March the 7th. So once, or if this is in place, and we note that there's any adjustments that we would like to do in the future, I'm hoping that we can make some adjustments accordingly. That is not just set in stone with this resolution.
So we are required to report to Treasury in making that election how we intend to spend the money. So we will be reporting consistent with the resolution. However, Treasury has not come out with its final reporting guidance. And so which is due by the end of April. And so we don't know exactly what they mean when they say you have to identify ahead of time how you're going to spend the money. What we've tried to do in this resolution is be quite specific as it relates to some of the items. You know, sewers, we're pretty confident we can spend that amount on sewers, if not a whole lot more. We're pretty confident we can spend that amount on police, and then as well as the IT related expenses. So it's really the most flexible expenses are the 700,000 that are some that we've categorized as Matt so aptly described as government services. So it's very broad. So you have a high degree of flexibility as it relates to that. And this does tie back to what Councilmember Keel was saying. We, as well as you, Councilmember McCluskey, I don't know so much if it's grant writing or someone to help us go through all these various programs. They can focus on it and pull out things that would apply directly to us. So we're going to take, as we get a chance, as we get through some of this, we'll have a chance to look at some of these things and see whether this is something that is easy for us to deep dive into, or if this is something that, given the breadth of the legislation, we need help with. And we'll keep you guys informed as we make progress on that evaluation.
All right. Okay.
Thank you. Anything else, Councilmember McCluskey? Okay.
No, that's it. So I'll stay tuned. Looking forward to hearing what maybe grant opportunities that we might have.
Before we move, thank you. Before we move to Councilmember Wood, would either Matt or Eric, could you tell us what the obligation date is and the spend by date is? Those are sort of benchmarks for us to be aware of too.
The funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024, spent by December 31st, 2026.
So just to, we're not there, we're not close, but those are things to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, the way to think about it is the 24 date is the contract signed, the 26 date is checks out the door.
Okay, great. Thank you. Councilmember Wood, your comments or questions, sir?
Yes, two things. First, I'd just like to concur with Councilmember McCluskey's comment of looking for a grant writer or subject matter expert or consultant or whatever it is to help us pursue the potential monies that are out there that Councilmember Keel brought up. I think that would be a brilliant idea for us if necessary. Second comment is the 1.8 million for law enforcement. First, I fully support the idea of putting money towards it. However, next year, I assume we would have spent about $4.5 million on law enforcement, whether or not we had that 1.8 million, which leads me to believe we now have $1.8 million worth of free chicken. Where was that? Maybe it's not, but if you can clarify where that $1.8 million that we would have spent on law enforcement next year is going to be allocated, or whether it's staying in law enforcement reserve, or the accounting behind that, I'd appreciate that.
Now, we're not going to, there's no guarantee that we would spend $4.5 million next year. So we are expending 1.8 million. We would recommend that we spend $1.8 million towards the 4.5 that we believe we would spend if we continue to have the contract, if we continue to contract for public safety services. So we are not contributing this towards our reserves. This is expenditure for an expense that is not yet budgeted.
I just got a lecture from a lawyer. Thank you. I very much appreciate that.
Not a lecture, just explaining.
Thank you very kindly. I think I understand now, but
very good, Councilmember Wood. Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Just real quick on the grant, Council members Keel's comments has to be taken a little bit more than just, let's see if we can get someone to come in and help out. I think that there is a missed opportunity if we don't jump in it like yesterday. The monies are being talked about, and I think that I support what he's saying, and I think we got other two council members, but I'm putting a little bit more pressure, and that is we need to make that as a priority on behalf of the council to get someone to start looking into these, because these are monies that are flowing now, and they're being people around the country. We're not the only ones that are applying and grabbing this money. So I really truly believe that should be a very high priority, and I'm stating this for Mr. Suck, who is our employee, to give notice that we really, I think what we're saying is we want that to be a high priority, to get someone to start looking into how we're going to be able to have access to those funds to our city. That being said, I really believe that part of this study session was to also give a nod and somewhat of consensus, so to give some direction to staff or to our mayor for staff to come back with a final council resolution. And I do support the staff's recommendation, Mayor, for the one-time election, and that election has to be done here fairly soon, so we need to get that going. So I do support that happens, and I do support the categories that is being mentioned to simplify this whole process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa. And so I think everybody's had a go at it, except for me. Let me make a few quick comments. So also, I'm supportive of the resolution as drafted. The sewer project funding is key. I think Councilmember Keel brought up an excellent point. It is, though, the sewer project, these funds can go into that. We can spend $6.5 million in main construction without a problem and still not solve all of our sewer needs. But we do need to find a way to get side sewers so it's more affordable for our residents or businesses, for that matter, to connect. And there are some programs existing out there that we can try and link to that may not solve every situation, but they may solve some situations. If there's a low income funding or financing, the county has some programs too. We need to become, and I use this as a universal we need to become familiar with what those programs are, and then also certainly look at what else is out there, as every other thoughtful community in this country is doing. So part of that, I think, is, linking up with our congressional delegation, linking up with our senators, getting their staff's engagement. They're going to be the closest thing to an expert on this that we can touch quickly. But we still likely need a little more horsepower inside of our own tent, and enough help there to move forward. So perhaps there's a way we can speculate as to how, but all those things come into place. For this sewer to be really useful, people need to connect to it. And $6.5 million is a significant investment, but as we know, it's a $20 million problem. So, and we have another roughly $2 million already in the pipeline, pun intended. So anyhow, we're working with that. So that's a piece of it. The other things in there, if it is paying for public safety, 1.4, the taking care of the IT obligation, partly one that we've already implemented, and being able to beef up the support that this critical electronic infrastructure needs in our city, and how things have been moved forward. I think that makes sense as well. $700,000 in reserve, wrong term, unobligated, but for general purpose government uses. I think that's very appropriate. And hopefully, in my mind, hopefully we can find a good way to apply that to help local businesses. I know, having worked in economic development as an economic development specialist for a while in this state, it's hard to find ways to get government money to Washington state businesses that fit in the parameters of our state constitution. But let's figure it out. Maybe there's a way. I'm not giving up on it. I'm just saying my eyes are open to the challenge. Anyhow, so in favor of that, those are all things that I would look forward to and that we can move forward. And I think we have a pretty much uniform appreciation of this resolution. But we'll find out on March 7th when we bring it up for a vote. Councilmember Keel, you have your hand up. Is there something else you'd like to add?
Yes, Mayor, I do. Thank you for the second bite here. I just want to just echo what you said, and what Mayor Pro Tem talked about, this person that could help us. I mean, I think that's an excellent idea, using those other dollars. And the other thing that I would offer, and just leveraging, and I talk about us being more regional and getting, expressing our muscle. I mean, I because of my role at AWC, in the meeting, I actually have names, phone numbers, and face-to-face meetings with people, staff in the White House, and also in a lot of these other, federal agencies that are doing these grants, that we can call directly, not, some person that, might know some. No, these are the people that are doing the work, and we can make the call, and they will recognize it. So I think we just need to leverage, the connections that we have and make it happen.
I think it's great that we actually have someone already who we pay now who can help us with the White House and the staff.
I'm just a phone call to make the connection. Someone's gonna have to do the work.
I'm just teasing.
Very good. Yes, there's lots of ways council members help. So, Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa, did you have something to, did I cut you off? I didn't mean to, Councilmember Keel.
Thank you. Just one other point, just not related to this topic, but earlier on, Mayor Pro Tem asked about if AWC supported Senate Bill 5841. I did just hear back from AWC staff while we were talking, and we do support it. And in fact, staff testified in favor of it today.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you for the details. Appreciate that. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem Figueroa.
Thank you, Mayor. Back to this, we called it a consultant or a grant writer. I remember when I first came on board, there was, the city did have a independent consultant that actually worked on behalf of the city, walking the halls of Washington state legislatures trying to find money. And I don't know who it was or whatever, but certainly, trying to find somebody to come on board as a grant writer or an employee, even temporary, maybe we're better off hiring a consultant that does this kind of work that will do the work for us as well. It might be quicker to do that than trying to go through an interview. By the time we get through the interview and hiring and bringing them on board, the money be gone. So again, I think time is of essence, and we have to go to see what we can do to get someone on board, whether it be an outside consultant, which we use a lot on everything, to someone internally that is ready to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. And that's a good point. There's a lot of different ways to address this problem. I think first we probably need to internally think about what it is where we need the talent. I mean, and I'm not, by the way, I don't want to say something that suggests we don't have a talented team. We do, but we need more shoulders at the wheel. and that's what this is about. So, what kind of position to bring that shoulder into the wheel and help move this is it may well be a consultant. Who knows? It could be a graduate student. I mean, it depends on the type of work ultimately that gets involved, and all. So we get some ideas together and give council a look. So we are close to our scheduled time of 8 o'clock. We're a few minutes ahead. I don't mind that, but I wanted to check in and see if anybody has anything further they'd like to do on this, or further discussion to add before we actually move to adjourn. Mm-hmm. All right, I think we've covered it well. It sounds like a clear message to me. Staff, do you have any questions about what you've heard?
No questions. We
Nope.
intend to put this on our next consent agenda. You have the resolution, so hopefully that is all right.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, it sounds like it's time to move forward from my perspective, from what I hear. Okay, great. Well, very good. Councilmember Fleming, did I see your hand go up?
I did, Mr. Mayor. I know tonight was a study session for this issue. I would request that we do not put it on a consent agenda, but put it on the regular agenda so we can have some conversation if there's any follow-on questions or concerns that the council may have.
Very good. From my perspective, we'll put it on the regular agenda for discussion and then action. That works for you? Mm-hmm. All right, good. Okay, great. Well, with that, I'm going to say we've reached the end of our meeting for 2/22/22. It's anyhow. Was
on
Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, Tuesday. Yes. Okay. All right. Good. It's a momentous day. We'll come back and do this again in a few centuries. All right.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. We're adjourned. Have a good night.
Good night.
Guys.